Welcome back to this weekend's edition of This Week in Agribusiness. Well, just ahead of the coming week is the annual meeting of the National Association of Farm Broadcasting. And the association's executive director, Tom Brand, joins us this weekend. Hey, what's the state of affairs in farm broadcasting in the United States these days? How are your members doing, Tom?
You know, we've got solid membership numbers with the National Association of Farm Broadcasting. I think there was one thing that stayed consistent throughout COVID, and that was the coverage of agriculture in rural areas as well as urban areas across the country. As we gear up for our convention next week in Kansas City, our registration is right on par with where we were the last time we met in person back in 2019. So we're excited about that, especially as we've talked to industry colleagues that have said, expect to be down 15 to as much as 30%. So we're thrilled that people are still going to be a part of our convention.
The association has long met in Kansas City, and there was a time, of course, when the meeting coincided with the FFA convention. You were there in Indianapolis a few days ago. That was exciting, being back in person at that event, wasn't it?
It really was. And you know, when National FFA had announced earlier in the summer that they're going to be back in person, I think they're estimating a crowd of around 40, maybe 45,000 attendees with members and guests that were going to be there. Whenever I got into Indianapolis, they'd already cleared 53,000. And by the time the walk-in registrations were complete, they had over 60,000 that showed up at this year's meeting. The energy level is exactly what you expect from National FFA. Those blue jackets, corduroy jackets, making a big splash in town, and a lot of fun to be around the energy of those students as they gathered in Lucas Oil Field.
You're one of those adult volunteers who comes every year to the convention. I understand there are more than 200 of you who show up, who plan your schedule around the FFA convention when it's held.
You know, it is all hands on deck, as you can imagine, for a group that size. And my experience with National FFA goes back, of course, to my time in high school, but also being in the newsroom. As a broadcast intern, a student at the University of Missouri, I got a chance to work behind the scenes. That was 32 years ago, Max. I spent a couple of years as an intern. I became a farm broadcaster. I've come back and helped coordinate those student interns ever since. So an exciting time for me and a great way to connect to agriculture communication students. I had 3 outstanding interns this year. Utah State, Iowa State, and University of Wisconsin River Falls were where my 3 gals came in from.
Well, it's a testament and a reminder to the lifelong passion that many have after having been in or around the FFA. Back to your meeting coming up in just a few days here now. There'll be a lot of newsmakers there. In fact, you have an event where you bring together people from various agriculture associations and companies, and there's always news made at the NAFB annual meeting.
We have several newsmakers sessions that are scheduled for our meeting on Wednesday. In fact, I think 4 or 5 different ones, anything from carbon markets to the agriculture workforce to talking about sustainability and also looking at protein capacities here in the United States. We'll have a discussion about the Farm Bill. And then our largest day is actually on Thursday. That's when we do an event called Trade Talk. And this is a chance for agriculture companies and organizations and associations to have farm broadcasters come around and do interviews with them.
I need to talk with you about the McRib sandwich. You are, in my opinion, one of the foremost non-company experts on the McRib that is back now for what, the 40th season at McDonald's restaurants, right?
You bet. A product that came out of the University of Nebraska, made its debut in Kansas City. That tells you where the home of barbecue is if McDonald's did the test marketing here. And so celebrating a 40th anniversary of the McRib, I love this sandwich. I think it goes back to being a pork producer kid growing up on the farm. My sister had been National Pork Queen in 1977 and then was working for the Missouri pork producers. So there was all sorts of ties to that sandwich, and I have really enjoyed the McRib, probably more so than anyone else in the United States, admittedly.
It has a cult-like following. I'm not alleging that you're a cult member there, Tom, but there's this enthusiastic core with a website following the McRib every year and tracking locations. And I must admit, the other day, maybe influenced by you, I did buy a McRib sandwich. I found on the locator one nearby. I said to my wife, hey, There's a McRib near here. Let's go track it down. And I found the similar characteristics. I remember when it came out 40 years ago, I referred to it as sloppy and floppy. It was difficult to one hand, and you needed a bunch of napkins. And the kid at the McDonald's the other day when I pulled through handed me a fistful of napkins and said, "Sir, do you need more?"
I've had similar experiences. In fact, I've got a grading scale for the McRib sandwich. In my mind, it's the perfect sandwich. So every McRib starts at a 10, and then I deduct points. And my deduction of points comes whether the bun is fresh, the meat is cold. I look at pickle distribution. I look at how the onions are on there. If there's too much sauce on the side of the box, that's a pretty large deduction in my mind. And then if it drips sauce, or if it slips out of the bun, then that really takes it down on the brand McRib scale. I've had a lot of fun with that.
You're tough on them. You know, I'm not sure it ever measured up to the expectations of the pork industry. They thought it would be on the menu maybe the year round, but when you consider the fact it's been out there for 4 decades, maybe it has been a success in its own right, huh?
You know, I would like to think so. And like any campaign that you see from restaurants that are promoting, something special, I think McDonald's recognizes we can get a bigger splash by doing this a limited time of the year and keep that cult-like following that comes along with it.
Thanks much, Tom. We appreciate your assessment of the McRib and a look ahead toward the NAFB meeting as well. Tom Brand from the National Association of Farm Broadcasting. More coming up here on This Week in Agribusiness.